Upon the Japanese surrender at the end of World War II, the Chinese Communist Party sent seasoned Communist Cai Xiaoqian to what is now Taiwan Island to foment revolution. This group would be dubbed the CCP Taiwan Provincial Working Committee. Unrelated to the old Formosan Communist Party of the 1920s, its goal was explicitly as part of the CCP. This attempt would fail as the ruling Kuomintang Party led by Chiang Kai-shek captured Tsai, tortured him, and executed hundreds of people based on the quote-unquote intelligence they gathered from his torture. Tsai's betrayal broke up what little spy networks the CCP had on Taiwan. The Kuomintang would remain unchallenged on Taiwan Island despite widespread dissatisfaction with the regime after a series of uprisings. So let's talk a little bit about this guy. Cai Xiaoqian was a member of the Formosan Communist Party Old Guard. Born in 1906 in the southern Taiwanese city of Zhanghua, he joined a number of failed Formosan nationalist movements in the 1920s before moving to the mainland in 1925. He helped found the short-lived Formosan Communist Party in 1928 alongside other core members such as Xie Xuehong and Lin Mushun. The Formosan Communist Party never gained ground. Too much tension between itself, the Japanese Communist Party, and the Chinese Communist Party, and the Japanese colonial police took apart in 1931. You can learn a bit more about it in a brief earlier piece of mine. Tsai escaped Japanese arrest by fleeing to the mainland, where he rejoined the CCP. The CCP at his time was on its back heels, relentlessly pursued by the Kuomintang. In 1934, Tsai partook in the legendary Long March alongside Mao Zedong, Deng Xiaoping, and other CCP immortals. He is the only Taiwanese to do so, losing his wife and 2 small children in the process. Sticking with the CCP throughout the Long March gave Tsai the trust of the party and affirmed his communist bona fides. At the end of World War II, he would be assigned the task of instigating the overthrow of the nationalist government in Taiwan. Upon arriving in Taiwan, Tsai met up with Xie Xuehong, a feminist scion of the old Formosan Communist Party and dubbed Taiwan's first female revolutionist. She had been newly released from Japanese prison and was working to recruit socialists. Working out of a small bookstore in Taipei, they developed student movements in Taipei, Hsinchu, and other major Taiwanese cities. The Taiwanese had tired of Japanese colonial rule by the time the nationalists retook control of the island, but the honeymoon did not last long. On the evening of February 27th, members of the government-run Monopoly Bureau beat up on an illegal female cigarette vendor after she protested against them for seizing her products. People objected to this, and a crowd formed to punish these agents and demand reform. The nationalist government responded, as you might expect, angrily to this. The government declared martial law for 4 decades, eventually, and armed military police patrols appeared on the streets, randomly shooting whoever would be on the streets. This would begin what is now known as the 228 incident. As mass unrest from the February 28th uprising spread across the entirety of the island, Xie Xuehong organizes a group of students in Taichung to fight the nationalists. On March 2nd, she would gather a bunch of Taichung citizens to expel the corrupt Chinese officials. She established the Taichung People's Government and founded a small civilian army of around 400 people to attack the city's army barracks. Quickly, they managed to take the police station and several local government bureaus. Naturally, the government responded, and they sent a large group of reinforcements to take back Taichung. The communists retreated into the mountains of Nantou and attempted to wage guerrilla warfare alongside the Taiwanese indigenous people. The indigenous people, though, refused to cooperate, and the troops were finally, quote-unquote, disbanded by the Chinese nationalists. Xie Xuehong fled to Hong Kong, never to return to Taiwan. The 228 incident of 1947 would annihilate many native Taiwanese left-leaning intellectuals, giving the Taiwan branch of the CCP a vacuum into which it could grow. Tsai stayed in Taiwan to take advantage of this opportunity, recruiting new members and planning another uprising so to overthrow the regime. This decision would lead to his capture. As 1949 progressed, it became increasingly clear that the CCP would win the Chinese mainland. The Kuomintang prepared for its ultimate retreat to Taiwan Island. As part of its preparations, a man named Mao Renfeng was appointed the head of the Confidentiality Bureau of the Republic of China and given the task of finding communist spies. Mao, not related to Mao Zedong, would zealously pursue this task. His intelligence officer learned about the Guangming Daily, a volunteer-run underground newspaper distributed to followers of the Chinese Communist Party. It had begun as a secret document circulated by Cai Xiaoqian to 20 of his comrades, but it grew to a large publication with a good following in Jilong City and Taipei. The Confidentiality Bureau gets its first break when the family of a female university student finds a copy of the paper in her home and reports it to the police. The police interview the girl and find out it was given to her by a fellow student named Wang Mingde. Once arrested, they trace Wang's connections through National Taiwan University's law school and uncover dozens of communist associates in branches across Taiwan, including Jiayi, Jilong City, and more. Eventually, the officers trace their way to Cai himself, and he is captured in April 1950. Cai Xiaoqian's capture sparked a ruthless witch hunt across Taiwan Island. Identified, probably by himself, as the top guy in the Communist Party's Taiwan cell, he is alternatively tortured and coddled until he cracked and betrays the CCP. He would name names. A lot of names. Anyone even remotely related to Cai faced arrest and summary execution. Over 1,800 people are reported to have been arrested in connection to the Cai Xiaoqian spying case. Some of these people were genuine communist operatives. Du Feng and Wu Shi, for example, the highest known ranking intelligence ROC officer to have turned spy during this period. But many more were just random people Cai had friendly relations with. They did not deserve to die. Every time intelligence officers met with Cai, a new group of people would be hauled into the military law department. Watching this in horror, Cai's jailhouse cellmate cried out at him, "Brother Cai, please don't say any more. Say no more. Go down with honor." Innocent victims of the expanding purge include Li Youbang, a Taiwan native who was a former CCP member but subsequently left them. He was dramatically denounced in public by Chiang Kai-shek himself. He was jailed without trial, and when he came down with a terminal illness, the Kuomintang, rather than releasing him, carried him out in a stretcher and shot him. His residence in Taipei's Luzhou district has been turned into a memorial for those who have lost their lives in what is now called the White Terror. I visited it. It's really nice. The purge cost many hundreds of people their lives. It also cost the CCP one of the 4 preconditions it believed it needed to take Taiwan militarily in the 1950s. Cooperation from embedded communist cells helped the CCP take Hainan Island, but Chiang Kai-shek's ruthless widespread purge robbed them of that in Taiwan. I want to note that it is not the only nor even the biggest reason why the CCP never tried to invade Taiwan. For example, the 400,000 Kuomintang troops on Taiwan, the PLA's lack of ships, and the inconveniently timed Korean War, for example, all of that mattered. But losing the CCP cells was a reason. The irony is that the man at the heart of the whole case survived the purge. After the purge ended, Cai Xiaoqian would be recruited in the Kuomintang's Security Bureau, and he worked there for several years under the close eye of the Kuomintang's Interior Security Service. He died in 1982 of illness at the age of 74, and the CCP has since condemned him as a traitor to the People's Republic of China. Thanks everyone, have a good night.